Hi friends, welcome to Wild Care. Sorry we kept having to reschedule this. We had lots of stuff going on. I of course am Allison with Wild Care, and I am here with the amazing Melissa Toffelmoyer, who is Wild Care's Ambassador Program Manager. Melissa, what are we learning about today?
Today we're learning about owl pellets and dissecting owl pellets.
Whoa.
So it's a question that we get quite a bit is what is inside an owl pellet, what is an owl pellet, and what is the difference between an owl pellet and a pellet that a hawk or a falcon or an eagle would cough up?
Right.
So if we start with our diagrams here, you'll notice this is a diagram of a hawk. And hawks, eagles, falcons have the crop. And basically what that is just a storage.
Okay.
So it's just storage for food, it softens up it a little bit, and then goes down the digestive tract.
It's kind of like a pre-digestive spot.
Pre-digestive spot, yeah.
So that's hawks.
That's hawks, and owls do not have that.
Okay.
So what happens is, I have a little pretend little mouse here, is when an owl swallows its prey whole, because it doesn't have teeth, right? It has that hooked beak.
Right.
Swallows its prey whole, goes down the esophagus and into the proventriculus.
Proventriculus. There's a vocabulary word for everyone.
Right, yeah, that's really hard. And basically what happens is all of the digestive enzymes and acids and other fluids start to break down the prey. So in this case, if we're talking about a mouse, it's breaking down all the meat and the organs.
Okay.
And then it moves down to the ventriculus, which is the gizzard. Okay. The gizzard separates the digestible material from the indigestible material. Now that would be feathers, fur, scales, and bones.
Right.
Okay. So that takes a few hours. And once that process is complete and all that material is separated, the indigestible material, the gizzard compacts it into what becomes a pellet.
Okay.
And then that pellet moves back up to the proventriculus, and it'll stay up there from 16 to maybe 20 hours. It can hold it. And then the way that they cough it up is the esophagus starts to have spasms, and it brings up that pellet, and then they cough it out. Now they have to cough up a pellet to make enough room to have their food again, to go hunting.
Oh, okay, so if he has something, a pellet, he's not able to make room to go eat again. Well, that makes sense, because it goes in that way, and then apparently it comes back out that same way through the proventriculus.
Right.
Nice.
And pellets are really important because it tells a lot about what kind of prey is in the area, maybe the lifestyle of that owl. Sometimes you can tell by the size of it, maybe the species of owl. There are some really cool, I always want to point out this one. This is the bearded vulture. This is the lammergeier, and this one's in the Alps.
So cool.
And his digestive juices, or their digestive juices or acids, are so powerful they can digest bones. In fact, one of the
big bones too.
Big bones.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the nicknames of the bearded vulture is the bone crushers.
Ooh,
right?
So cool. But for most owls, for most raptors, bones aren't very digestible at all.
It depends on the acid content of those juices.
Got it.
So generally, owls just don't have the acid content that a vulture would. So I have a couple of different pellets here. We were fortunate enough to have a great horned owl pellet, a barn owl, a raven, and this is one of the pellets from one of our hawks, from Grace. And so I kind of have it all started here, and I'm going to put on, of course, because some gloves because, you know,
it's owl puke.
It's owl puke, and it's probably got some nasty stuff on it, you know.
Could be.
They don't really smell well either, so just in case anybody ever does this, it's like, ugh, these are gross.
I have to say, every time I find an owl pellet when I'm out hiking, I immediately grab it and start ripping it apart. I should probably wear gloves when I do this.
Yes. So we can just start here by just drying it out, and then just start kind of spreading out the bones here.
Ooh.
Okay. Now, I know this is a great horned owl pellet because this is the species I borrowed this from. And what you're looking at is actually several different mice. So this was probably 4 or 5 different mice.
So we would have eaten all of them in a meal.
And then he would have collected it all and digested it. So you can see that there's tons of different types of bones in here. Mostly, I mean, that's a rib. Clearly that's a rib right there. This looks like some sort of hip bone.
Hip bone or scapula or something.
Scapula, yep. So again, different. Oh, there's another one too. That one looks really neat.
I always like it when you can find a skull.
Yes, I know, right? That's why I'm hoping. It's like the disgusting lotto, but I want to. Oh, here's a little jawbone, which I think is really neat. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, so interesting.
And then here's another little jawbone. Start of a jawbone. So you can see all these different bones that are in here. And then, of course, when you do this, you can always get a pellet chart.
Oh, yeah, those are fun.
So
play pellet bingo.
Pellet bingo, right? So rodent, shrew, mole, bird. But for that, and this is a great horn, so they can have all that.
Sure.
So now, if we look at the one from the hawk one, you'll notice the difference in color.
Yeah.
Okay, one is captive, one is not.
Oh, right.
Right? Because we will feed white mice to our captive raptors, and when they are going in rehab, you want to give them a darker colored mouse because there are no white mice in nature.
True.
Right?
Misty is asking, can you get sick from owl pellets?
Yeah, I don't know sick. I don't want to say sick, but they can have stuff on them again, which is why you wear gloves.
I wouldn't eat them.
Yeah, I wouldn't eat them. I wouldn't lick them or anything.
Wash your hands afterward. I would think that especially a fresh one could have bacteria on it and stuff that you don't necessarily want to ingest. And she's asking if we have to sterilize them. We did not sterilize these, and that is why Melissa is wearing gloves when we've used these in education programs. Yes, we do and put them through a sterilization process.
Right, and so
good questions.
Yeah, so you'll see here in the hawk one,
glaring. Okay,
see any here.
So there aren't any
material in there.
So it's a big chunk of fur for the hawk.
Big chunk of fur.
And the bones, is that because he has picked around the bones, or just that his stomach was able to digest them?
His stomach was able to digest them.
Oh, that's so interesting. I just assumed that it's because hawks tear their prey up.
No, it's the different acidity of their stomach acids.
So that's just a big thing of fluff.
Yeah, just a big thing of fur. We can see what we got in
And that was from Grace the Red Tail?
Grace the Red Tail. This is probably about 2 or 3 for her. And this one looked really promising because it had big bones on the outside.
And this is our great horned again?
This is our great horned again.
Yes. And they do, of course, cough up their pellets in captivity as when they're in care in the wildlife hospital, as they do when they are wildlife ambassadors.
See, that's a bigger one right there.
So interesting.
Right. Nope, here's a big one too.
Yeah, I love that you really can learn a lot about the environment, the habitat that the owls are in by what they eat. And we can go back to this chart very briefly. So you've got your rodent, your shrew, your mole. There's that mole, and a bird, and all the different bones that you could theoretically find in a pellet. And of course, in care, we're primarily feeding them mice that have been defrosted, and frozen mice that have been defrosted.
There's another one. There's another little jaw.
Karina says, I didn't know hawks make pellets too. I thought it was only owls. Do other types of raptors do this?
Yes, they do. They do. And when the esophagus has spasms, people are like, oh, doesn't it hurt them? And it actually doesn't, because when it's in this form right before they cough it up, it's very soft.
Okay. So soft and moist, probably,
soft
right?
and moist and malleable. These are ones that I've frozen and then defrosted. I'm hoping to find a skull in here. I know that's kind of morbid, but that's what I'm totally trying to find.
I feel like our audience is a lot like us, that we're like, yeah, that's fascinating. That's
What's
amazing.
that one? What's that one right there? Okay, that looks pretty good right there. And then this is from the barn owl.
Look, there's one.
There you go. See?
Was this a barn owl patient?
This was a barn owl patient. Look at that. And we found
barn
what
owls,
we were hoping to
eat
find.
Thousands of rodents during a breeding season.
Yes, they are the natural rodent control, population control. You see a lot about, rodenticides, and really that's really one of the niches that especially barn owls provide for us, is they provide rodent control. And look, we asked for a skull and we got one.
Let's see if we can zoom in on that little guy here. Yeah,
isn't that cool?
So interesting. Yes, and of course barn owls and all of our raptor friends do get what's called secondary poisoning when rat poison is used. I know most of our audience knows that. But if you put out poison for rats, then those poisoned rats get eaten by raptors, then the raptors themselves get poisoned. And I mean, you can kind of see why. I mean, it's like, it's their digestive process. Well, I guess any digestive process is going to put them in the way of the poison, and the rodenticides, the anticoagulant rodenticides,
and it's
are ones that do transfer from one animal to another.
And you got to think, I mean, rodents are just such a big prey base for so many different species that really it wipes out whole entire different across the board.
Interesting question from Misty. I heard they don't drink. Is that true?
No, they drink.
They do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They do.
Yeah, they do drink water. Now, most of their water or hydration actually comes from their prey.
Okay.
So that's why, like if you have like Harris's hawks that are in the desert, and there's not a lot of water in the desert, you're thinking, how did they get it? Organs have a lot of water in them, so that's how they're getting their hydration.
Oh, okay, interesting. But like a great horned owl, how does he drink?
Just kind of like a parrot does. They just get down in the water and
Oh, isn't that interesting? See, thank you for donating. Thank you so much, Linda. Wonderful support. We appreciate it so much. I learn all these fun things from Melissa whenever we do these.
Thank you. And this is a raven, and I had never dissected a raven pellet, so I thought it'd be kind of fun.
So, do other corvids cough up pellets?
Yeah, and in this one, this is from a resident evacuee that we took care of.
We did, yes.
And he coughed up the pellet, and I believe this was the time he had fish. So
like a scrub jay? Would a scrub jay cough up a pellet? He's not eating meat. He's eating seeds.
Right.
So probably not. Yeah, so you'd have to be a larger bird that actually eats pellets. So a fish bone, is that what we found in there?
Yes, it looks like a fish bone to me. And he had a bunch of different stuff. So I just thought that would be neat just to kind of compare that. Obviously not like the hawk. So hawk we actually have no bones in.
Right.
Now corvids have a little bit of bones, but of course then our owls are the ones that have all the bones in them and the skull, which is really cool. But you can see, I mean, just by these 3 pellets, I mean, that's a lot of little animals there.
It is.
And I mean, you could probably, if you had the time and some super glue, you probably could put this all back together.
I've always wanted to do a fully articulated skeleton of a mouse coming out of an owl pellet. Yeah, that's one of my goals. Misty asks, how long do owls live?
It depends on the species. Sure. So usually the larger they are, the longer that they will live. So your great horned owls are 30s, 40s, depending on
years, yeah.
Of course, then is it in captivity or not? Because in captivity, you can extend the life of raptors 2 to 3 times, and the reason that is because one is they're eating every day, and they're eating non-poisoned food.
Yeah, exactly.
2 is when they get sick, we get them medical care right away.
Yeah.
All of our ambassadors are fortunate that they're steps away from an ER.
Yep, that's so true.
And then the last one is that we protect them from any other predators.
Sure.
So they can last really long.
We did have, a couple of years ago, we had a barn owl that had been banded 15 years ago come into the wildlife hospital. Yeah, so, you're looking at, a good 15 years of survival, and so that we know that for sure.
Yeah, and that's why banding's so important too.
Definitely.
It also tells us, is it working? Is our education working? And we found another skull.
Yeah, barn owl in the wildlife span. We did get one into wild care that was 15.
God, that's old.
Yeah, I mean, they can probably, in captivity they can live 30.
Yeah, they can live.
Years.
They can live. They can live pretty old.
Yeah, and then in the wild, again, we know one made it to 15. I think that's probably an unusual age.
Yeah, because usually they do get taken out by rodenticides. They have a lot of babies too.
Yeah,
and they can have it twice a year. Two different broods.
Yeah, interesting. What you got there?
And that looks like some sort of maybe like a. Not ribcage.
Is that like a pelvis or something?
Yeah, right.
So interesting. Let's scoot the light over just a tiny bit more.
There
we go. And you can actually order owl pellets online. You can get kits, and they've been sanitized.
Yep. Oh, and another, 3 skulls.
Got another skull. Isn't that so fascinating? So if people are at home and you are looking for a really cool science project for your kids or for yourself, I have to say I am just as interested at this at my age as I would have been when I was 8. You can order those, and you too can dig through an owl pellet.
Yes.
Misty's asking about owls mating for life, and I know that great horns are certainly mostly monogamous.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2. Well, depending on who you ask, there's about 200 238, 250 species of owls, so it just depends on
Depends on your guy.
depends on your species.
The barn owls do, right? Don't they tend to come back to the same mate?
Yeah, unless and that's pretty general. Like Harris's hawks, they have the girls have a lot of different boyfriends. Is a nice way to put that.
Is getting Trill out, so I'm going to just show our different diagrams again here. Here is the hawk that has his crop where he's able to do most of his digestion or do a large part of his digestion. Thank you, Misty. I love it when people ask questions. So fun. Oh, here she is.
And here is
Oh, she's such a star.
Trill.
She's such a star.
So her pellets are tiny.
I bet they are.
And the mice she eats are very tiny as well.
What you looking at, Trill?
Yeah, but Trill's about 223 grams, so which is a good size for her. And she came to Wild Care in 2014. Has a head injury found underneath a tree, some sort of impact. Sometimes you can see her pupils dilate different sizes, and that's an indication. Yes.
If you watched our gala, we had a great video of Trill, and in the moment that Melissa talks about her eyes dilating, she does this it's really great. She's definitely looking at something. What do you think she sees?
You know, with brain injuries, it's hard to tell what part of the brain that affects and how that affects the vision. So she could just be seeing shadows.
Yep.
So she tends to be definitely, she moves around a lot at night, pretty much sedentary during the day. Talks a lot though, and is awake most of the day. Takes naps just like the rest of our animals do. She's a western screech owl. And
so pretty. Can you show us her back and we can check out her camouflage plumage? Isn't that so beautiful? Sitting on a tree branch, she would just blend right into that bark, wouldn't she?
Yeah, she's tiny but mighty. She's a feisty one.
Tiny but mighty.
I always like to point out on the raptors, it's usually the tiny ones that are the feistiest. It's usually not a big guy.
No question about that. Yeah, I noticed in the wildlife hospital when they will be, look at her profile, she's so interesting. The owl profile is so cool. When they're handling a great horned owl. I mean, you're wearing the big gloves and stuff, but that bird is usually really, really laid back and calm. If you're handling a screech owl, there is clacking and hissing and taloning and all sorts of hullabaloo.
And lots of biting.
Lots of biting, absolutely.
They're little biters.
Lots of taloning. Yeah, and the great horns tend to be just like, meh.
Yeah, either I know I'm big. I'm
exactly.
Much. And she's this year she actually laid 4 eggs.
That's
she had
right.
never done that continuing through the pandemic here. So she laid 4 eggs, which was very, very interesting to see her exhibit that natural instinct.
Definitely.
But yeah, she's
not fertilized, of course,
not
because
fertilized.
we don't have a male screech owl.
Nope, but I did save them, and just want to compare them to. And we also had Grace, our red-tailed hawk, laid an egg as well. Just because they're here also doesn't mean that necessarily will lay an egg. I knew a red-tailed hawk that had gone 16 years and then 1 year just decided to lay an egg. I think that has to do something though with the males in the area.
Sure.
Stimulating that for them to
Interesting. So maybe there was a male screech owl hanging around.
Maybe she has a boyfriend we don't know about.
She might have a boyfriend we don't know about, absolutely.
But she's great. She has named Trill because she has this trill. I don't know if she'll do no, she won't do it.
Nope.
Usually that's my talk to her in the morning. But she's absolutely wonderful. So
she is. What a gorgeous little owl she is.
Yeah, she's tiny. Look at her. That's a serious face, I tell you.
It is. And Trill did come into the wildlife hospital as a patient, and then when it was discovered that she was not able to successfully hunt on her own, she was young enough and calm enough that we decided she'd make a really good wildlife ambassador. And how can you resist that little face? What an amazing little bird.
And she comes out for Facebook. See, you can kind of see it starting to dilate a smidge on the right there.
Yep.
She comes out for Cartier presentations and tours as well. So, and she, again, like all of our ambassadors, helps us to connect to the public and drive home the message for conservation for their species and for all wildlife, really. They are the best teachers. I mean, I can give you a whole bunch of facts, but seeing the animal and connecting with an animal is something I can't provide. That just has to happen.
Oh, she's just marvelous. Blink. I love her little feathery eyelids.
Oh, yes. And, oh, my gosh, they have so many feathers. And it depends on the species about how many thousands of feathers. You know, like a snowy owl, because they're in the Arctic, they'll have a ton of like 25,000
Super
feathers.
dense?
Yes,
Wow.
right, because they're trying to keep warm. But you know, going into the fall here, this really is a great time for them because it's, I know I've said it before in Facebooks, but it's very hard to take care of them during the heat,
right?
Because they overheat. So really, they're built for the cold, so they're definitely a little bit more active here during the colder months.
It's getting cooler, yes, for sure.
Yeah, and she's like, it's Halloween coming. It's kind of my season, like the vulture.
It's true. Misty asked, does she have any companions?
She does not. Couple of reasons why we don't do that. One is just because we put in a male with her doesn't mean that they'll get along.
Right.
So they have to choose their mates. And two is you have to have a different permit in order to breed educational animals. And three, it's a whole different husbandry for them and protocols and everything like that. And plus we want to keep the wild. We want to keep those guys out there in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why we don't have mates for them, why they're solitary.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And she grew up, she was very young when we got her, so she's comfortable around people and certainly spends a lot of time with us. Isn't she just a beauty?
And she eats once a day. Everybody eats here once a day. You know, I mean, of course, in the wild, starvation is a big problem too. They do have a varied diet. They eat insects. They can eat little reptiles, you know. Of course, tiny little mice.
Yep.
But with us, we give her mealworms and we give her mice.
Yeah.
So that's what her diet consists of.
And Misty's asking about how about a friend for her, and they tend to be pretty solitary animals.
They are. They're complete apex predators.
Yep.
So think of them as like sharks. You know, group of sharks don't get together, group of owls don't get along together.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I like to point out with raptors too, is that they will kill within their own species. So
So if we had another Screech owl and we tried to put him or her in with Trill and they didn't like each other, then you can definitely. Rose wants to know what the animal, what the owl's name is.
Trill.
Her name is Trill, and that is because the western screech owl does not actually make a screeching noise. She makes this wonderful little burbling trill.
Yes,
and
yes.
it sounds kind of like a ping pong ball rolling down a set of stairs.
Yeah, let me try. I'll try my owl sound. No, she's like not going to do it.
Not talking to you
But
today.
it sounds like that.
Kind of like that.
Yeah, kind of like that. And
So Trill,
one of the pandemics.
T-R-I-L-L. Yeah, they're funny. If you hear that, you'll often, when you're wandering around at night, hear a loud screeching sound, and that is a barn owl. The barn owl makes an ear-splitting, sort of nails on chalkboard screech.
Yes, and that's where they got the name the ghost owl, because they hang out in Europe, they hang out in those old abandoned castles, right? Because those are great areas. And so when people go in there, they would see this, flash of white feathers and hear that.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's haunted. It's a haunted
Totally
Kansas.
Absolutely. Nope.
They're ghosts.
Just a barn owl. Awesome, ladies. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that joined us today.
Yeah.
We will be back next week. We're planning on doing these on Wednesdays, but I will put a note on Facebook if for some reason we change our schedule. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much. And always lovely to see the beautiful Trill, the western screech owl. She does have a fairly naturalized setting as much as we can within the parameters of the space that we have. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also customize depending on what their injury is.
Yep.
So for her, she has because she has impairment in the vision, we have lots of platforms for her.
Yep.
So we customize them as well for
Definitely.
that.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
All right, bye-bye.